Merci. Merci d'abord à tous les organisateurs de ce colloque pour la très bonne organisation de l'événement et puis bien sûr de m'avoir invité. Je suis très heureux d'être ici parmi vous. Pour des raisons de pratique, dans mon cas, je vais passer à l'anglais parce que je suis plus à l'aise avec les termes en anglais. Par contre, si vous avez des questions en français, n'hésitez pas. Alors, before I begin, I will tackle some terms that I will use. Unlike most of the presentations so far that have focused on GATT and GATS and on the WTO as an institution, this one focused on TRIPS. TRIPS is the Agreement on Trade-Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights. As was briefly mentioned yesterday, TRIPS is different from the GATT and the GATS in that it sets out minimal requirements that all of the members must implement in their own national legislation. In that respect, TRIPS is different from the others. Another aspect is that property rights are not in themselves goods. They are rights, they are titles, they mostly cover patents, trademarks, copyrights, and there are a few other categories of IP rights in TRIPS. One last aspect, CETA, it was also mentioned yesterday, is the comprehensive economic and trade agreement between Canada and the European Union. It is expected that members of this agreement will ratify it in the next year or two, although Professor Caro mentioned yesterday that he doesn't believe that will happen, but that's not a problem for this presentation because the articles that I will discuss from CETA are provisions that we find these days in many free trade agreements, mostly implying the United States, the European Union, of course, and Switzerland through the EFTA. So I will move to the next. So just a quick outline. I will begin with TRIPS objectives and TRIPS objectives, yes, and then move on to describe something that is different in the MFN clause from TRIPS and from GATT and GATS. From there, we'll move to CETA, give some examples regarding two provisions from CETA, and contrast them with TRIPS and how they are implemented in some way through TRIPS MFN clause. And we will see that this implementation through TRIPS MFN clause is somewhat at odds with TRIPS objectives. And I will then draw some lessons for trade negotiators. So TRIPS objectives are mostly found in its preamble and in Article 7 objectives. Through history of the negotiations of TRIPS, there were mostly tensions between two groups. There were some developed countries on one hand that wanted pro-producer terms in TRIPS, and like the United States, the European Union, Japan, and there were other developed countries and some major developing countries like India, Brazil, Argentina that preferred, not preferred, but wanted some user-oriented terms in the agreement and terms that would also take into effect technological sharing and transfer between developed countries and developing countries. And the best way to instill that was to simply bring the typical balance term of IP law theory, in that the best, not the best, but IP law theory, the purpose of IP law is to give an incentive to produce. And to do that, the best way is to reach a balance between the rights of users and the rights of producers. Most producers are also users of IP rights. They need to build on either ideas or technologies, inventions, and with that they will bring out in some cumulative process more creations and more inventions. So as you can see there are many terms in there that describe specifically this balance. Balance is itself set out in the objective, balance of rights and obligations. There's a reference to social and economic welfare. There's a specification of transfer and dissemination of technology, and there's a recognition that too high a level of protection of IP rights can be an obstacle to trade. But at the end of the day, most people, all countries recognize that good IP rights would be good for trade. And one of the clauses that was included in the TRIPS was the Mfm Provision. As most of you know, the main exception to the most favored nation treatment is the regional agreements. The MFN clause says that if you give something to any country, you must extend that to all other members of the WTO. There's an exception is if that has been given through a RTA. In GATT and GATS, this is the end. This is the end of the story. In TRIPS, there's a limitation to that exception in that the RTAs must have come into effect prior to January 1st, 1995. So any post-1995 RTA that has IPR chapters, the rights and the obligations in these chapters must be extended to all members of the WTO. And one of these RTAs that we will discuss now is CETA. CETA, in its objectives, we can see that there is definitely more producer oriented than TRIPS in general that sought a balance. The B, paragraph B had terms in the same way in the TRIPS objectives, but paragraph A is definitely producer-oriented, and there are no other aspects in the chapter or in the agreements preamble that discusses objectives. So these are the only formal objectives, and there is nothing that specifically refers to users, unlike TRIPS. To illustrate this, I will discuss two main provisions. I don't expect you to read that. You can read that on your own. I will explain them instead because these are very technical articles. Sorry about that. So this one is the extension of patent terms when there are some delay between the grant of a patent and the approval of the pharma product that is protected by that same patent. To make a long story short, most pharma products need to obtain some governmental approval before being granted, before reaching market access and all. And these clinical trials can be quite long. It can take a decade, sometimes even more, who knows. They must prove at the end of the day that the product is innocuous and that it reaches the effect that it promises to reach in treating the patients in some way. So what happens is that if there's, no, it's still that one. What happens is that if there's some delay between between the grant of the patent and the grant of the patent and the approval for market, there can be some lost time on the patent, and the producers don't like that in general. And what happens is that this provision says that if there's some delay, the term of the patent will be extended in some way to cover that delay from up to five years. Yes, and this will give more market exclusivity time to producers. It's okay. So let's say that we're in 2015, firm ABC patents a product. It obtains its patent in 2018, and market approval is reached in 2020. Through TRIPS, the patent should last now up to 2035, which give firm ABC market exclusivity for 15 years. With this, the patent would last up to 2037, and since market approval is given in 2020 in this example, it would give 17 years of market exclusivity. There's another clause that is for data in these trials, but I will skip this one because I will miss some time. But the end effect in both cases is that there is longer exclusive market presence for pharma products. Here there is a mistake. I haven't had the time to explain it, but the clause that we just skipped is not necessarily for patented products. The effects of all that, there are many, but they're all pro-producers or not anti-users, but let's say users have to pay more. So there's a longer time on market exclusivity, which makes more profits for the producers, but on the other hand, they will incur more costs, and not they, but customers and users, which are mostly public and private insurers. There's some delay then in the transfer of knowledge. If firm DEF wants to build some, not build, but wants to create some, needs some info or to use the patent to develop their own product, there will be some delay, 2 to 5 years, for them to access that same knowledge or that same technology. So to bar this delay, they can incur more costs in their production, or they can accept to wait some more. And last, there can be some duplicates in their product approval costs if they also have to obtain their own market product, but that was for the clause that I skipped. So we can draw some conclusions from that for those who negotiate trade deals. The first one is that there are TRIPS-related aspects that must be considered that will have effect, some rippling effect through free trade agreements because of the MFN clause. There's vice versa. If people negotiate RTAs, they need to take into account the effects that the concessions and the commitments they will take for intellectual property rights will have in their own agenda. And one of these effects is that, let's say that country A makes some concessions to country B with IPR, and that they expect in exchange of that to have some trade concessions in goods or in goods tariffs. It's a good deal maybe for them, but there's something that they must take into account, is that they will not be able to use that same concession with another RTA with country C, because country C will already then, from that concession made to country B, benefit from that concession through TRIPS and MFN clause. So other countries will free ride on the initial concession once it is made. And so it's a one-time concession they can make and benefit from. Thank you.